3 miles below the surface of the Pacific Ocean, there is a Soviet submarine that should not exist. It sits at 16,500 feet, crushed slightly by pressure, listing on its side. Around it, nothing. No light, no sound. Just water that has not moved in years. Inside the hull are 98 dead sailors, 3 nuclear missiles, and a set of code books that the United States government wants more than almost anything on Earth. But there is a problem. Nobody can get to it. Not without building a machine that does not exist, funded by a man who is not really involved, to do a job that is officially not happening. This is the story of the largest, most expensive, most absurd lie the CIA ever told. And somehow, well, it almost worked. March 1968. A Soviet ballistic missile submarine called K-129 vanishes. She is on a routine patrol, routine missile tubes, routine crew. And then silence. Moscow waits. A check-in window passes. Then another. By the third, the Navy knows. So the Soviets do what any superpower would do. They mobilize a search fleet, dozens of ships, aircraft. They sweep a section of the Pacific the size of a small country for 2 months. They find nothing. Eventually, they give up. But what the Soviets do not know is that the United States has been listening. Beneath the ocean, laid quietly along the seafloor for years, is an American underwater microphone network called SOSUS. It listens for submarines, for propellers, for engines, and on a particular day in March of 1968, it hears something else. An implosion, loud, specific, unmistakable. The sound of a hull collapsing under pressure. The Americans triangulate the location, a spot 1,500 miles northwest of Hawaii, 3 miles down. And then comes the question that begins everything. Could we go get it? The Pentagon's first instinct is to laugh. 3 miles is not just deep. It is the bottom of the meaningful ocean. At 16,000 feet, the pressure is over 7,000 pounds per square inch. Enough to crumple a tank. Enough to flatten a steel sphere into a coin. No human has ever set foot there. No machine has ever lifted anything close to a submarine from that depth. It would be like trying to pluck a single grape from the bottom of a swimming pool, using a crane parked on the roof of an apartment building or in the dark, while wearing oven mitts. But the Navy and the CIA know what is inside that submarine. 3 nuclear warheads, a code machine, operational manuals, and the cipher keys for an entire era of Soviet naval communication. If the Americans can read those code books, they can decrypt years of intercepted Soviet messages. Past, present, and, likely, future. So the question stops being, can we, and starts being how. And this is where the story stops being a Cold War mystery and starts becoming something else entirely. The CIA realizes very quickly that they cannot just send a ship out to raise a submarine. The Soviets would notice. The world would notice. You cannot park a giant lifting vessel in the middle of the Pacific and pretend nothing is happening. They need a cover story. Not a small one, not a plausible deniability lie. They need a lie so big that journalists, scientists, investors, governments, and engineers all believe it for years. So they build one. They go to Howard Hughes, the reclusive billionaire, aviator, Hollywood mogul, famously eccentric, rumored to be losing his grip on reality. The perfect face for a strange project that nobody can quite explain. The cover story is this: Howard Hughes is going to mine the ocean floor. For what? Manganese nodules, small potato-sized rocks that sit on the deep seabed and full of valuable metals, nickel, cobalt, copper, manganese. It is, on paper, real. The nodules exist, the metals are valuable, and nobody has ever figured out how to actually mine them, because it is insanely hard, which makes it the perfect lie. It is exotic enough to explain a giant ship, technical enough to explain secrecy, and speculative enough that the Soviets cannot easily verify it. The CIA leans in. They commission a 619-foot vessel, the Hughes Glomar Explorer, with a moon pool in the center, a giant rectangular hole that opens straight down to the sea. They build a sister vessel, a submersible barge, long enough to hold the actual lifting tool, a claw. They call it Clementine, 200 feet long, steel fingers, designed to wrap around the submarine's hull and grip it, like a hand picking up a fallen pencil, from 3 miles up. And here is the most insane part. Wall Street believes it. Oceanographers attend conferences about manganese nodules. Newspapers run features on Hughes's bold new venture. Other companies announce competing seabed mining projects. The lie creates an entire industry around something that was never going to happen. The Glomar Explorer leaves Long Beach in June of 1974. She sails out into the Pacific, slowly, heavily, a strange vessel built for an industry that does not exist. She positions herself over the wreck site, and then she begins the most secret engineering operation in American history. The crew lowers Clementine, section by section, pipe by pipe. Each pipe of the lifting string is 60 feet long. They have to screw them together, one at a time, like building a drinking straw 3 miles tall, down past the warm water, past the thermocline, past the depth where light disappears completely, down, into the silence of the abyssal plain. The claw reaches the seafloor. It closes around the broken hull of K-129 and lifts, slowly, pipe by pipe, the same way down, in reverse, for days. Soviet ships circle nearby, sometimes just a few hundred yards away, watching the strange American vessel, sending helicopters overhead, asking, in radio calls, "What exactly are you doing out here?" The captain of the Glomar Explorer answers calmly, "We are testing equipment for deep-sea mining." And the Soviets believe him. Then something goes wrong. Halfway up, some of Clementine's steel fingers fail. A section of the submarine, a large section, slips out of the claw and falls back to the bottom of the ocean. It contains the part of the sub the CIA wanted most: the missile compartment, the code room, the cipher gear. Gone. Back to 16,000 feet where it had started. What the Glomar Explorer pulls up to the surface is a fragment, a torn forward section of the K-129. What was inside has been debated for 50 years. 2 nuclear torpedoes, almost certainly, some operational documents, pieces of equipment, and the bodies of 6 Soviet submariners, the men who had been on the K-129 when it sank, who had been on the seafloor for 6 years, sailors, officers, boys, really, some of them. The CIA does something almost nobody expects. They give them a formal burial at sea, naval honors. The Soviet anthem played over the deck of an American ship in international waters. The bodies committed to the deep with full military rights. It is filmed. Decades later, in 1992, a CIA director would hand that tape personally to Boris Yeltsin. The CIA wanted to go back. A second mission. Recover the rest. Take another shot at the code room. But in February of 1975, the story breaks. A burglary at Howard Hughes's offices in Los Angeles surfaces strange documents. A journalist named Jack Anderson connects the dots. He goes on national radio and tells the country that the United States government has been trying to raise a Soviet submarine. The cover story is over, but the CIA refuses to confirm it and refuses to deny it. Reporters file Freedom of Information requests. The CIA responds with a phrase no government had ever quite used before. We can neither confirm nor deny the existence of the materials requested. That phrase enters American law, American journalism, American culture. It gets a name, the Glomar response, born from a lie about a billionaire. who was never really involved, who was used as a face for a claw that tried to lift a submarine 3 miles out of the Pacific. The CIA partially declassified Project Azorian in 2010, a redacted internal history, some photographs, some of the cover story documents, the footage of the burial at sea. But fundamental questions are still unanswered. Did they recover any of the codebooks, any cipher keys, any nuclear material? The agency will not say. Some former officials have hinted the mission was a partial success. Others insist it failed. Both could be true. Both could be the cover story. And this is where Project Azorian becomes something stranger than a Cold War operation. It becomes a study in what a country will do. To know. The United States spent the equivalent of $5 billion in today's money, built the largest civilian-flagged vessel of its kind, invented a deep-sea industry that did not exist, buried foreign sailors with full honors in international waters, and birthed a phrase that still appears in court rulings 50 years later. All for a chance. Just a chance. At reading another country's mail. There is a Soviet submarine somewhere on the floor of the Pacific Ocean. Most of it is still down there. The men who lifted the rest of it back to the surface are mostly gone now. The barge they used was scrapped. The Glomar Explorer was leased to oil companies, retired, and sent to the breakers in 2015. But the lie they built around it, the cover so vast it created an entire industry, the phrase it left behind, is still here. Some of the most audacious things humans have ever done were never supposed to be real. They were only supposed to look real long enough to do the impossible.